Wallace Center and the National Good Food Network and its Food Hub collaboration. The Wallace Center, a business unit of Winrock International, is the host of the NGFN webinar series. The Wallace Center has been a leading organization in the movement for a more sustainable and equitable food system for over 25 years. Today, the center supports entrepreneurs and communities as they build a new 21st century food system that is healthier for people, the environment, and the economy. The center serves the growing community of civic, business, and philanthropic organizations involved in building a new good food system in the United States. In particular, we're focused on advancing regional collaborative efforts around the country to move good food, healthy, green, fair, affordable food beyond the direct marketing realm into larger scale wholesale channels. The National Good Food Network, or NGFN, is an initiative of the Wallace Center. It is structured as a network of networks, ensuring efficient flow of information and innovation from the boots-on-the-ground projects to the national level and back down to the grassroots level across the nation. The Wallace Center coordinates and supports the network. Our goals are to work with the growers to ensure that there is abundant supply of good food to meet the high consumer demand for the product, to collect and disseminate the best models, stories, methods, and outcomes, and to ensure that policymakers are informed about the wonderful successes our network and partners have had so that we can continue to increase support for regional healthy food. You can learn more about the great work of the National Good Food Network on our website, ngfn.org, and feel free to contact us at any time using that email address. One major piece of the NGFN's work is the NGFN Food Hub collaboration. For the last couple of years, we have worked to support the growth and success of food hubs across the country with a four-pillar approach: networking, research, technical assistance, and intensive work with study hubs and regional food hub networks. We have a library of fantastic resources on food hubs. You can get them there directly by typing foodhub.info into your browser. There is a collaboration with USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, Center for Regional Food Systems, Farm Credit Council, A Wholesome Wave, School Food Focus, and the National Farm to School Network, all bringing unique perspectives to supporting this linchpin piece of regional food systems. So let me introduce Jake and Dana together, and they'll take you through their presentation without my interruption. I'll come back after the formal presentation and present your questions to them. Jake Carter's work creating environmental nonprofits, tech companies, and innovative co-ops such as Black Star Co-op Pub and Brewery in Austin, Texas, has led him to help start Moon Tower Community Agricultural Co-op, Central Texas's first farmer and community-owned food hub. Moon Tower Co-op is utilizing the power of cooperation to expand the local food market while engaging the community in the movement to provide more local, sustainable, and equitable food to Central Texas. You'll learn all about these businesses in Jake and Dana's presentation. Dana Curtis is a native Texan and one of the founding members of the Workers' Assembly at Black Star Co-op Pub and Brewery, where she began working in January of 2010, overseeing the membership and investment campaign, which brought the co-op from dream to reality. Currently, she is on the business team and serves on Black Star's board of directors. Dana attended the University of Texas at Dallas, where she studied literature and philosophy and attended graduate school at Texas Women's University. She taught undergraduate women's studies at Texas Women's University before leaving academia to join the labor movement as a union organizer. Dana has committed her life to social justice and strongly believes in the transformative power of the cooperative model. Jake, Dana?
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. I'm Jake with Moon Tower Co-op, and I'm sitting right next to Dana Curtis from Black Star Co-op Pub and Brewery.
Hi.
And we're going to be taking you through the webinar this afternoon on community-based food business financing with an emphasis on co-ops, the cooperative movements, and how you can fund your own community-based food business through a co-op. All right, so first we have topics. What we're going to talk about in this webinar is what is all this co-op stuff anyway. We're going to explain to you what co-ops are, how they work, give you a brief synopsis, a little bit of history on them, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of community-based financing, where we're going to talk about things like MISOs and DPOs and Class B shares and try to clear all that up for everyone by the time the webinar is over. And we'll have a question and answer session after we're done talking at you. So up first, we have beer. we're going to talk about Black Star Co-op and how they successfully funded the world's first co-op pub and brewery, and using the MISO model that Moon Tower will also be using to fund our food hub. And I'm going to turn it over to Dana Curtis.
Okay, hi everybody. So, Black Star Co-op is a community-owned and worker self-managed brew pub in Austin, Texas. We are the world's first cooperatively owned and worker self-managed brew pub. So what that means is we're basically a multi-stakeholder cooperative. That's the two classes are the consumer members. Anyone can join. We have members all over the country and a couple around the world. And then our worker members, who are also owners and do make sure that everything's running and have complete control over all of the operations. We just formed in 2006. A group of people in the community said they wanted to open a bar that was owned by people in Austin, and we had someone there from a local food co-op who said, hey, it should be this cooperative model, and someone who had just moved from Texas to Texas from Alabama who said, hey, we should brew our own beer because that's a great way to really get involved with the community and showcase the local flavor. So that's what happened. And then we spent 4 years getting that off the ground, and we completely funded ourselves through our members and through a direct public offering, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So yeah, we brew our own beer, we showcase other beers, but we also have a great kitchen with award-winning food and beer, and with a focus on local and sustainable products.
Thanks, Dana. Next, we are going to, let's see, skipped one. Next, we're going to talk about Moon Tower Co-op. Several of us from Black Star were looking for our next challenge after Black Star was up and running and is now a multi-million-dollar business selling to other pubs their beer and looking to start a bottling line. So we sat down in a coffee shop one day and talked about things we thought we could do. We didn't come up with any good ideas. And then myself, having grown up on a farm and sold to the American rice growers, I asked, how come there's not a farm co-op in Central Texas or anywhere that we could find structured like this that serves the small farmer, especially the small multi-produce farmer who currently sells to farmers markets and restaurants? How come there's not someone that represents them? So we decided to start Moon Tower Co-op. That's the friendly name. It's also called Moon Tower Community Agricultural Co-op to the state of Texas. And we incorporated last year, May 2nd. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary. We are currently in the startup phase. Soon we will be starting a financing round, very, very similar to the one that we did with Black Star some years ago, which financed about $600,000 worth of build-out. Ours will be a little bit smaller because warehousing does not cost quite as much as a pub and brewery, but we are going to be working with our supporter members who are community members who join for $50 each, and they are people who are interested in supporting the co-op and supporting the cause of local food in Central Texas to lead this financing round. And then there's the producer members, who are the farmers, who have a bit of a different structure to their membership. And they're the ones, the supporter members, the community members, are helping through this. They both get their own set of benefits, such as the producer members will be participating in what we call a multimodal food hub, where we buy produce from them and distribute it to institutions only. There are companies in town, as well as individual farmers who have relationships with restaurants and cafes and smaller entities like that, including some nonprofits. And so we're going to be distributing to institutions, being able to roll the local food from farmers, aggregated, roll it off the trucks on pallets into large-scale kitchens in just the way these kitchens are used to operating. but now they get to buy local rather than having to buy something from overseas or across the country. The producer members, the farmers, will also be able to participate in a bulk purchasing program where we buy for the farmers and sell to them at wholesale rates. So think of things like fertilizer and compost and fencing materials. It is Texas, and we are in the in the middle of what is looking to be an over 10-year drought. So we'll be buying harvesting gear for them, so they no longer have to pay retail rates if they're a small farm. They do get the power of cooperation, and they get to buy wholesale by going in on it together. We're going to have a value-added line making pickled and fermented products at first, a handful of sauces, quite possibly, so that we can ensure that everything the farmers are able to grow gets put to use. No edible food ever gets to go in the compost pile ever again. We buy from them specifically to put into value-added products that feature their farms, and their branding is front and center. We're going to have a commercial kitchen for the producer members to use during the day, and also educational technical certifications, tax, healthcare assistance, anything that can be aggregated to help the local farmers in a 150-mile radius. The supporter members, the community members, get access to classes, trainings, volunteer days, exclusive events, supper clubs, discounts at local retailers, quite a whole host of benefits for their $50 equity stake, that membership fee that they pay. We're working with a lot of local groups here to make sure that our members feel welcome and feel like they are a part of the co-op and they are doing good for the local food economy. So Dana and I are going to talk about what is a co-op, give you a little bit of background into what all this is. Co-ops are more than just co-op grocery stores. So we do a lot of different things, but co-op's a definition. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll explain it. A cooperative, also called a co-op, and we put the hyphen in there, by the way, because otherwise it looks like coop, like it's a chicken coop. So co-op is always hyphenated, so people don't think we're trying to start a big chicken coop or something. A co-op is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. Co-ops are a legal business structure. They are just like nonprofits or corporations in that they are very specifically defined under law, and you cannot call yourself a co-op in most states if you're not actually a co-op, just like you can't say you're a corporation if you're not. You have to file the paperwork because it means a very specific thing. It means that when you join a co-op, you are actually an owner of the business. So whenever you join REI, whenever you join your local co-op grocery store, you are a legal owner of the business, and you do get a say in how that works. Most co-ops have elected board of directors, perhaps committees, task forces, things like this that you can serve on to help guide the ultimate direction of the co-op. And in a co-op, and this is something that we'll touch on later, there are multiple types of shares, but whenever you become a member, you get a share that is attached to you, your name, your person, and that gives you a vote. Every person in a co-op only has one vote. You can't get any more because everyone in a co-op is equal. It's a completely democratic society. Each co-op is also independent. It is its own legal structure of business, and so it is an independent business that operates on its own and gets to make its own decisions. And each co-op is community-based. There are 7 cooperative principles that we'll talk about here in a bit, and one of which is concern for community. Co-ops are businesses that are concerned about their community, their impact, and try to help their fellow man as much as possible.
Okay, so what links all co-ops together are really these 7 principles. So as you can see up on your screen, I'm going to briefly talk about when co-ops really got started. The first wave of co-ops, they started in England, and they were called the Rochdale Pioneers. So they were coming off of this this time with Industrial Revolution. There there was just a lot of poverty and not a lot of jobs. So this community got together, and they decided that they were going to pull all their resources together and start a local general store. They started very small, just buying flour because they were having trouble getting flour without worms in it, and things like that. And they built up until they had the store, and they came up with these 7 principles. So what these principles are is that open and voluntary membership means that anyone can join. There cannot be a restriction. Of course, at Black Star, we do have one restriction, is that you have to be 21 because you're owning a place that serves alcohol. So, but in general, you can't be restricted for like by age, race, class, things like that. Generally, democratic member control. There's just, like Jake was saying, one member, one vote. So when we get in later to talking about Class B shares or these direct public offerings, it doesn't matter if you invest more money in your co-op, you only get one vote. There's also member economic so all members are contributing the same amount of money for that same one vote. Also, what co-ops do is they share they share all of the profit at the end of the year. So you get to look and see how much money the business made, and then you distribute it out to the members. So, and that is usually based off of how much someone uses the co-op. So, for example, at Black Star, every say you come in once a week and you get a beer, we keep track of how much money each member spends. And at the end of the year, we look at overall profits, and we're able to distribute that out based off of how often someone uses the co-op. So if someone comes in every week and is buying a beer, they're going to get more of the end profits at the end of the year than someone who didn't use the co-op at all or just came in once or twice. Autonomy and independence is really important because it means that the members are controlling what's happening with the business. They get to say what meets their needs and what they want to do. Our members said we wanted to brew our own beer, so that's what we did. There's not just one person that's controlling everything and saying that, no, we're going to, brew whiskey or something like that. It's kind of a silly example. But education, training, and information is also really great. We're able to, at Black Star, another example is we're really able to use our pool with the local community and our members to do things, trainings and classes about local food, about beer, about environmental sustainability, and it's great. That's a great way to give back to our community. And then another, one of my favorites is cooperation among cooperatives. This is so great in Austin. We're actually being held up as a national example. The National Cooperative Business Association has started their first regional business center called the Austin Cooperative Business Association, and they're really looked at Austin as an example because of what we're doing here. So when Black Star wanted to get started and we were taking our Class B investments that we're going to be talking about today, Wheatsville, our local food co-op, invested $50,000, and that was great. That we wouldn't have been able to do that without them. In the same way, Black Star is helping other co-ops get off the ground. So when there is a bakery co-op, a worker co-op that started, we said, hey, we have to buy a lot of bread. We sell tons of sandwiches and hamburgers. And so we asked them to start making our bread, and that really helped them start off their business with a huge wholesale order. And they do the same thing at Wheatsville, our food co-op. They sell their donuts there. And so, yeah, and then, of course, concern for the community. If the community owns the business, we really care what happens to it. We don't want to be polluting our community. We don't want to be purchasing products from sources that don't care about what's happening in our local community. So that's another thing that's really great. We're able to buy local, keep our money in our city, and also all of those jobs are staying in our community as well. So then if we want to talk more about where that left off, then in the 70s, tons of co-ops exploded around in the United States, mostly food co-ops, which kind of led co-ops to get this name as like hippie co-ops, which they're not, but unfortunately it's kind of seen that way by some people. But another really big thing that happened was the ag co-ops, farmers getting together and pulling their resources. And now we're entering this third wave of co-ops, which is happening right now. Tons of different co-ops are starting. We've got Black Star, of course, and now there's another brew pub just like us that opened in Ohio, and they're starting all over the country. So we've got another one starting in Texas, 2 in California, 1 in Seattle, 1 in Michigan. I just talked to some people in Athens, Georgia yesterday. So it's great. We're getting so many calls and interest to people that want to replicate this model. So it's great. And then, of course, worker co-ops are also seeing an explosion. I'm on the board of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, which is a member service organization for worker cooperatives and democratic workplaces in the U.S. And we have grown our membership, doubled our membership in the past year because there's so many people that just want to own their own business and really see this as a way to solve economic inequality and issues with environmental sustainability. So we're really seeing this as a great way to solve, as a tangible way to solve problems that we're facing right now.
Thanks, Dana. So, funny graphic here, but we wanted to point out that you're completely surrounded by co-ops. They are all around you all the time. So if you ever need any help, any support, cooperation among co-ops is here to help. So for instance, there are farmer co-ops all around. They were started in the 20s through the 40s, the majority of them. Some of them are older, and they're in agricultural and rural areas all over the U.S. and Canada. Those of you who live in rural areas may be familiar with utility co-ops, electric co-ops, telephone co-ops. They were started in rural areas to aggregate services and provide for those who would not normally have access to electricity or phone simply because they live so far out and it's not economically feasible for a corporation to do it who's worried about their bottom line. Credit unions are co-ops. All over the U.S., every credit union is basically a bank co-op. When you join a credit union and you have to keep that money in your savings account, that's your joining fee and that's your equity stake in the credit union. There are purchasing co-ops. Moon Tower is going to be doing a bit of that. Retailers co-ops like True Value Hardware is a retailer co-op, as well as some grocery stores. Consumer co-ops are like Black Star, REI, places like this where you go in and you shop. They ask you if you want to become a member. You, as a consumer, get to own the business where you shop. Worker co-ops like Red Rabbit Cooperative Bakery here in Austin, Texas, is a business that's owned by the workers, where it doesn't make sense to be a consumer co-op or another type because there are no direct consumers. There's no one coming into a store. They're selling all wholesale. And this gives the workers the power of cooperation too, in that they are able to democratically govern themselves and have a fair and equitable workplace. When you were in college, you may have lived in a housing co-op. They're all around the U.S. Here in Austin, we have College Houses Co-op, and then we have ICC, which is a council that represents smaller housing co-ops that maybe have just one house and a few people living in it. And last, at least on our slide, is Food Hub co-ops, which are starting around the U.S. There's 50 co-op. There's Moon Tower getting ready to launch its operations, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide we're going to talk about is a cooperative financing model. What is all this MISO stuff? What is all this DPO stuff? What is all this Class B share stuff? Well, it's not as hard as it sounds. It's actually pretty easy. MISO, DPO, EIEIO. What does all this mean?
Okay, so this is Dana again. We at Black Star, we called it a MISO. It's our member investor share offering. It's called a DPO if you want to do some research on your own, or a direct public offering. This is what it's known as in the IRS, for the IRS, for accountants, and when you're researching the federal and state laws, because these are very different by state. So you really have to make sure that you are paying really close attention to your state laws. But it's just a different way of raising money so you can get money from the public without having to register shares with the SEC. When we think about shares, we typically think about stockholder shares that you have to register and have all kinds of restrictions. But a direct public offering lets you get around those. Of course, there are ways to get around it, and this is one of the great ways to do this. So basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works in Texas. Texas, there is a restriction that you have to be an owner of the business. So it's a great way for cooperatives to raise money because you have all of these people. Like at Blackstar, we have 3,300 members that we can ask to participate in a direct public offering. So you basically get to, you have to, of course, have a really good investment packet together, but you can ask people to make an investment, and normally these shares carry some kind of a premium or a dividend so that people are actually making money on them. And yeah, so it's a really great way to raise money without having to bring in investors that are going to want some type of controlling voice in your business. And then they're not even really like silent partners because they don't get any say at all. So I guess what I want to point out from this slide is that that what you have to do is you have to set a minimum investment for investors. At Blackstar, we did shares that were $100 a piece with a minimum buy-in of 5 shares. There was a minimum of $500. Maximum is set by state and federal law. The state law in Texas was quite high, which we never even got to. The maximum investment we got was $50,000. Like I said, we raised about $600,000 this way. I think Jake mentioned that. And so the reason why we set it so low with a minimum buy-in of $500 is because we really wanted to give everyone in our community a chance to invest if they could. $500 is not a lot to some people, but it is a lot to others. And so we just wanted to have a really wide variety of people be able to participate. Of course, we didn't set the minimum at 100 because there is quite a bit of administrative costs that you have to deal with when dealing with these things. We picked a term to keep the shares invested. We let people pick a term of 5, 6, or 7 years. So it meant from the time that the investment started, for 5, 6, or 7 years after that, no one could ask for their money back. The shares were illiquid. After that time, people could ask us to buy them back, and what you can do is write into a contract saying that if the co-op is not making enough money, you don't have to honor those requests. So the risk is entirely on the investor. We also offered a premium buyback, so if someone invested over $5,000 when their term was up, we'll buy the shares back at $105. And if they invested over $10,000, we put a 10% premium, so we'd buy those shares back at $110 a share. This was really great for Blackstar to do before we opened because we didn't have a brick-and-mortar location. We had no proof that our business was going to work. It was quite risky for the investors. And now we are so successful that we are in the very planning stages of our second location. We'll probably do another one of these direct public offerings to fund our second location. However, we won't do the premiums this time because we've already proven that we're a business that makes money and can start a second location, so there's no reason for that.
Well, it went a little fast, sorry. So next we want to talk about some benefits of a MISO, also known as a DPO, or direct public offering. Why would you want to do this? Why is this a way that you would want to fund your community-based food business? Well, first of all, because it is community-based. The community you serve finances your operation, and it gets repaid a dividend on that financing that they gave to you, which helps build trust in the community. Like Dana just said, we're about to embark on our second location for Blackstar. There's also going to be a bottling or canning line to be able to distribute our beers to grocery stores and places that don't have space for kegs. But we are now no longer offering the over and above premium. We're only going to be paying earned dividends on the first round of MISO or DPO financing for Blackstar. We paid a premium. So if you invested in certain tiers, we would give you more. So we would give you, instead of buying back your shares for $100 each at the end of that 5, 6, or 7 years. We would buy them back for $105 each or $110 each, plus any dividends that you earned in that time. Because we have so much goodwill among the community, because they know that this will work, we already have investors interested in a second round to start another location. It's also wholly internal funding. You don't have to worry about going to banks to try and get a loan. Banks, even credit unions, unfortunately, don't always understand co-ops, and they want the same old thing they always want. They want some sort of show that you can pay this back. So they're going to want you to put up your house, your car as the collateral for the loan. Well, in a co-op, that's not necessarily the way it works. Everyone's elected. You can be kicked off the board just like anyone else. You may have employees in the co-op, but it's not always great to be asking your employees, can you put up your car as collateral so we can start this thing that may or may not work? So you get to ask the community for funding, and every person gets to put in really a little instead of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars unless they want to. So you don't have to ask your employees for that. Deferred repayments, loans, credit cards, things like that, may want you to start paying them back right away. You may get a bill the very next month, and it's time to start paying back, even though your cooperative is not making money yet. Like Dana said, Black Star's terms, which Moon Tower is modeling ours on, were 5, 6, or 7 years. So we had a while to start making money and fill the coffers before we needed to start buying back those shares from the investors, thus paying back the investors. There's no underwriter. You need a good lawyer, and you need tax professionals to help you with this. But you're not having to pay someone to underwrite this, to guarantee this. You can get off, you can work with a whole lot cheaper resources, even pro bono work if you can find it. Moon Tower is having great success finding people who, lawyers, tax professionals, others who want to do pro bono work for us to help us figure this out, structure our offering, write the language. We don't need an expensive underwriter to do this. And there are fewer restrictions. Moon Tower, being a food-based business, especially someone who deals solely in local food, there are grants and deferred repayment loans available to us, but they all come with restrictions. Some grants can't be used for startup operations. Some can't be used for build-outs. There's no guarantee that we're even going to get them if we apply. So with our direct public offering, with our member investor share offering, we're able to use that money for anything the law allows, which, at least in Texas, is really pretty broad. We can use it for building our warehouse. We can use it for buying trucks. We can use it for paying our employees even before we sell our first bit of produce to a local institution. We have everything we need in the bank accounts, and we're able to tell investors, this is how much we're looking for, and this is why. And they get to fund us rather than having to cobble together grants and loans from other organizations, federal agencies, things like this, to try and come up with a whole funding plan. We can do it all with one single direct public offering.
So I forgot to mention one other thing, but we keep talking about these shares have a dividend. So I wanted to explain that a little bit better. Every year, at the end of the year after you close out your books, the business looks and says how much money did we make, and the board of directors sets aside the dividend on this direct public offering, these shares. So Black Star, we took our first investments in 2008, and we had a location fall through, so we actually didn't even start our build out until the beginning of 2010. So we had shares that people had made in early investments that didn't declare, the board didn't declare dividend at all. It was a 0% dividend for quite some time. We were able to declare our first dividend in 2012. That was just a 5%. And then last year we declared a 6% dividend, which is great. It's so good. That's way better than a money market account or any kind of return on investment that you get somewhere else. But I would like to say that the dividends are capped at 8%. by federal law. That's different by state. In Texas, it's also 8% as well. So you'll just make sure you have to really look and see what your state allows you to do.
Next, we're going to talk about determine a need. So you're going to be financing your new food-based business, but is the business going to work? Is it going to fly? Is there a need in your local community for your business? So before financing, what type of food business is needed? And you have to answer questions about where should it be located for the most impact. You need to conduct studies and surveys to make sure that what you're financing, the money that you're asking friends, neighbors, and community members for, will be used in its most effective fashion. So you need to ask yourself questions like, does my community need a distribution center for local food? Does it need a value-added processing plant? Does it need a restaurant? Maybe it needs a co-op grocery store that sells local food from the local food hub. Maybe the food hub doesn't have a good enough outlet. Or does it need a kitchen incubator space to help start new food-based businesses in your area? So you need to start by making a plan and asking people what is needed and getting together with organizations like the Wallace Center to see if there is any data on what can be done here, because eventually you're going to have to pitch this to people. You're going to have to pitch this to people you know and ask them to invest in your new food-based enterprise. Number 4, since what we're talking about in this webinar is a cooperative structure, you have to figure out which structure works best. So after you've identified what type of food-based business your community needs, what is it missing, then you have to figure out how to structure it. So what type of co-op best serves this need? Who owns the business for it to be most effective? That's the basic question of a structure of co-op. How will the profits, also called patronage, be distributed to the members? And then you'll need to raise your membership levels so you can have a pool of investors to work with. So a few examples, if you wanted to start a distribution center, it could be a producer's co-op. It means it's owned by the people who are producing what's being distributed. So a distribution center that distributes local food could be owned by the local farmers. That makes it a producer's co-op. A value-added processing plant could be a worker-owned co-op, just like the worker-owned bakery here in Austin. A restaurant or grocery store like Black Star or Wheatsville in Austin could be a consumer co-op. It's owned by the people who shop there, who eat there, who spend time there. And finally, a kitchen incubator could be a hybrid. It could be a multi-stakeholder co-op, one of those fancy terms that we use. It could be owned by both the people who work there and the people who use it together, serving on the same board and making sure they look after each other's interests, and it's fair for everyone.
All right, let's talk about designing your offering. So the first thing you'll need to do is get a professional. Jake and I are not lawyers, so don't take what we say as law. But what you should do is definitely consult people that have done this before. As in with starting a co-op or designing an offering like this, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. One of the cooperative principles that we mentioned before is cooperation among cooperatives. Most co-ops will share all of their information with you. In fact, that's why the food co-op movement of the 70s has been so successful, is because they have all these networks where they work together and they all use each other's resources. So there's no reason to go it alone. Another thing that you'll have to do is design, we say design a MISO booklet. Again, the MISO is a term that Black Star used, but it's called a prospectus. So you'll have to really lay out for your potential investors what the project's about, how much your sources and uses, how much it's going to cost, how you're going to make money, who, if you have staff already picked out or an executive director, whatever kind of structure is going to be in place, that'll have to be in there, and of course the board of directors as well. And then really laying out the terms of your offering. I briefly talked about our terms. And then also the risk factors. This is really important, and in fact, I don't believe you can sign a legal document saying making an investment without having gone over the risks to investors. My contact information is at the end, and I'm happy to share with anyone the MISO booklet that Blackstar used for our investment. And then you start the community-based funding campaign. That is why I was hired at Blackstar, was to increase our membership and raise the money. And I was a community organizer before, so I had some experience with that. But basically what we did is just really reached out to our current membership, constantly had monthly events where we were building membership. And so we had a bigger pool of people to ask to invest. Because like I said, in Texas, you have to be a member of the co-op to invest. That is different in other states. So, what we were doing is constantly building the membership and then asking those people to make additional investments. We were lucky because we had beer, and beer is a great organizer. It's really easy to get people excited when you get them together and give them a free beer. But the local food movement is the same way. People get so excited about food, about growing food, about eating food, so it's a really easy organizing tool. What I would say is that you need to also be very strategic around this as well. We had software that we bought to really track what we were doing to keep us on track. We raised money very quickly, but it's because we had a full-time staff person doing all of that work. So here's a list of some resources. These are really great books. These two books, so we'll talk about direct public offerings and direct public offerings. That website, the Cutting Edge Capital, is a great source. They have videos, which I always find makes things very easy to understand. And then, of course, Jake and I's contact information is on there as well.
Exactly. Our email addresses are right there. They will be presented again in the next couple of slides. You are free to email us or check out our websites with any questions you may have. And I would like to attest to that these are both really great books. Don't let Practicing Law in the Sharing Economy scare you. It is definitely a great book for learning how to build a cooperative, a social enterprise, whatever you may be looking for in a sharing economy. It's there, and Raising Dough is also very, very good. We own both of those, so they are fantastic. Now we understand that all this may have been jibber-jabber to a lot of you. It certainly was to us when we first started, and we've become masters of it. So this is the portion where you get to ask us questions, and hopefully we'll give you a coherent answer. Feel free to ask anything you want. Our email addresses are also down there at the bottom of the slide. We're not checking them. We're not checking our emails during the presentation, but we certainly will be afterwards and going forward for any additional questions you may have, any resources that we can send you, anyone who may be better at answering the question than we are. So, Jeff?
That was very, very generous. Thank you. A couple questions about just some specifics. The $50 membership fee, is that annual dues or just a one-time investment?
So that's a one-time investment. When you join a co-op, and this should be true in all 50 states and even internationally, when you join a co-op, that is your equity stake in the business. It's sort of like your investment in the business. And co-ops set it to be a specific level. If anyone's asking you for yearly dues, monthly, more money, it may not be actually a co-op that you're joining. What you're doing is you're signing up and you're saying, I would like to be an owner of this business. I believe in it so much that here is $50, here's $100, here's $150, whatever it may be set at. Black Star's was 100, became 150 after the business opened. And Moon Towers is $50 because we believe in the power of local food and that this should be open to all members of the community. So it's just $50 one time. You never have to pay it again. And if you're ever tired of being a member of the co-op, you can petition the board to get that equity stake back. It's up to the board whether or not they'll give it to you because it depends on the health of the co-op. But you can withdraw from a co-op too because it is your investment. It's your equity stake, and you get to have it back if you're ever disenchanted with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And can people get paid either in voting shares or in DPOs for sweat equity instead of a non-cash transaction?
No, I don't know if legally you can do that. We can do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do all states allow DPOs?
Yes.
Great.
In some form or fashion. Yeah, you'll have to check your local state laws because it does vary state to state. But all 50 states from our research allow a direct public offering, which in the co-op world we call it a member investor share offering. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people who buy MISO shares don't have to be accredited investors, correct?
Correct. You do not have to be an accredited investor to be able to buy. That's another great way because you get to ask the person down the street if they'd like to invest in your co-op, if they believe in the idea, and they can do it. They simply sign the forms that a lawyer has helped you draw up after reading your prospectus, your little booklet telling about what you're going to do that has all those risk and cautionary statements in it, the boilerplate that the lawyer's going to put in there for you. Then they sign a little agreement, they give you the money, and they're now an investor of your co-op, hopefully with big returns like Black Star gives, 6% a year. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Can you give us a sense of how you do marketing? So how do you reach out to people who want to join the co-op? How do people find you? How does the communication work? Looks like Dana may have fallen off, and Jake, you're muted. Oh, there we go. I have some sound back. Barely.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what the last part that you heard was, but so it really varies by the type of cooperative that you're starting, and so that matters on your community and where the people are that are interested in those things. So for Moon Tower, we have a presence at farmers markets and have events at local farms. We work with groups like the Young Texas Farmers Coalition and different groups like that. With Black Star, people are interested in Black Star for various reasons, either because they care about local food, because that's what we serve there in our restaurant, or they care about beer, or they care about worker treatment because we're recognized nationally on the way that we treat our workers, or because they care about the environment and we're LEED certified and have great environmental, a really great environmental impact on our community. So in that way, we did a lot of marketing by having parties. People that like beer tend to like parties. So so once a month we would have a big party somewhere around town until we got a location, and then we had it there where you would come and we'd give away 2 pints of beer. That's what legally you can give away in Texas. And we got people to join the co-op that way. Sold merchandise, and that's how we made money for 4 years before we actually opened the door. So I would say your marketing is just like any business. It's really going to depend on the type of business that you start.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right. Good. When Black Star decided to expand, how were the members allowed to weigh in on that decision-making process?
Great. That is happening right now, so that's a great question. So basically what happened, what made this easy for us is our members told us, we use policy governance, and anyone who's involved with nonprofits will probably know a little bit about that. But one of our ends policies, which are the end goals that the co-op members set, said that we would open up a second location. So that was really easy, and it was undefined as to when. But what happened is during the last legislative session, brew pubs and breweries in Texas won the right to distribute in a much easier way. It used to be very, very hard to distribute in Texas. So once that happened, we were like, oh man, it's going to be super easy for us to open a distribution facility, which is what we're doing. We send out an annual member owner survey and ask our members questions, and that's a great feedback way of saying like, hey, should we open this second location now? Members really want us to do that. We have, of course, we have our annual report that the members see every year. We're doing really well financially. So it's really the leaders of the co-op that lead that charge, and in our case it's the board of directors and a group of members that are very, very involved, and the workers. And so we had our annual members assembly meeting, and we discussed it then. We, always ask for feedback through monthly newsletters and blog posts. This is how we're keeping everybody up to date. And now that we're moving a little bit further on in the planning phase of our expansion, we'll start doing things like focus groups and committees to really get our members involved.
Great. And just sticking with governance, do members determine, say, worker pay, or how are operations type decisions made?
Not at Black Star. That's different for different cooperatives. At Black Star, members can elect the board of directors. Board of directors are in charge of the fiduciary responsibilities, but operations are entirely left up to the workers' assembly. A lot of food co-ops and co-ops have a traditional hierarchy with a general manager and then team leaders. Black Star is not like that. We are a collective body, and we use a collective decision-making process. So the workers are completely in charge of that kind of stuff. We set our own pay, and that's different. Some food co-ops say, like, here's how much money the general manager is going to make. That's not how things work at Black Star. We make a budget that we show every year to the board saying what our remuneration costs are going to be. And that's completely designed by us, how we're going to distribute that money.
Okay. Okay, good. There are a few questions about the very startup. So in that sort of before the doors were open phase, how did you fund the full-time staff person? How was software paid for? How are you paying for lawyers' fees? That sort of thing.
Let's see here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, if you shout.
Okay. So what we did is we were just raising money. That's how we did it. We operated for 2 years without having a paid staff. We were really lucky that one of the founders didn't have to have a job, and that's a very privileged position to be in, and not one that many people will find themselves in. But what I tell people that's really important when you're starting is to really play off your people capital. You're not going to have financial capital. You have people and volunteers that want to help and want to give their time, board of directors. And I think how we were really successful without having to have paid staff at first is because we were very consistent with these monthly parties that I was telling you about. It's once the community sees that you're serious, that you're there every month, that you're communicating with them through a monthly newsletter, they know that this is for real. This isn't something that they're going to give their money to and never hear from again. I mean, consistency is key when proving yourself, and to really play off of the volunteers. Of course, with any volunteer organization, you have people filtering in and out, and that's why it's so important to constantly have a really strong core group of volunteers. Once we were able to pull up enough equity together and really get these parties going, once they're a fixture that everyone knew about, we were selling a lot of merchandise, growing our membership. That's how we were funding everything, was just through this membership equity and through money earned on selling merchandise. So that's how we funded it. And I was brought on a year before we opened to raise the money we needed to for construction, but also because at that point we had 4 staff. So not only was I raising money through this direct public offering to pay for our legal fees, our construction, our startup costs, but also to pay for staff during the development phase.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And with Moon Tower, we, unfortunately don't have a single founder who doesn't have to work for a living. We all have jobs. The founders comprise the working board, as we call it. The board does all the work. We go volunteer on farms. We set up farmers markets. We throw the events. We do all the paperwork. I have an invoice for T-shirts that I have to pay for this afternoon. So we all do it outside of our regular 9-to-5 jobs. A few of us are lucky in that we get to come and go from our jobs as we please, and that certainly helps. But it can be stressful, and it can be difficult, but it is a passion of ours. It is a labor of love. So startup is an interesting time in a co-op's life, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you again make a clear distinction between in the investment, the MISO shares, and the voting shares? And do I have to have a voting share in order to be able to have investment shares? Just take it through once again.
Yes. So like I said, this is different in every state. In Texas, a restriction on direct public offerings is that you have to be an owner of the business. This is not that way in other states. It would have been easier to raise money had it been different. But in Texas, you have to be an owner of the business, so you have to have a voting share of the co-op, be a member of the co-op, in order to make an additional investment in this in the MISO offering. So that's how it works in Texas. It's different. It really varies by state.
Okay. When you went to approach the investors, how much of a business plan did you have? I mean, very formal or like a one-page plan?
No. No, sorry. It was a very formal business plan, a very formal prospectus that we had printed professionally on glossy paper. It's like a 12-page prospectus. Yes. I feel it. Colored copies show that you care. So definitely, yes, this Black Star was, I think, one of the reasons we're so successful, and I try to talk about this to everyone that wants to start a co-op like ours. It's not a game. It's not a joke. It's very, very, very professional. Yes, we had a very serious business plan. We once we were open, we refined that to be a 5-year plan. Yeah, we had a really good budget, a great sources and uses. It's incredibly important, especially when you're taking money from people in your community, to assure them that their money is not going away to nothing, that they're not just throwing it into the wind. We just issued a dividend last month, and I was so excited when I got to mail this guy a check, because I remember when he made his investment of $2,000, I was trying to convince him to do $2,500, because that was the median investment that I was shooting for. So I tried to convince everyone to do $2,500, and he said, no, I don't really expect to see this money ever again. And so every year when I send him his investment, I'm just like, ha ha, you're getting money from us. So yeah, I would say yes. I would not encourage anyone to start a direct public offering and take money from people unless you are very, very, very sure it's going to work. Because you also have to, I mean, that's what people want to hear before they're going to give. No one's going to write you a $10,000 check if they don't actually think they're going to see that money back someday or believe what it's going into. So you have to believe it, and you have to sell it to them. And I think the best way to do that is be incredibly professional and know exactly what your business plan is going to look like and all the risks of the investment.
Within your business plan, did you make reference to other cooperatives? I mean, for Black Star was the first cooperative brew pub, so there wasn't exactly a direct comparison.
Right. No, we did.
There's a question here from someone who is not in a thriving cooperative region. There are definitely regions in the country that cooperatives are de rigueur, but it sounds like Austin. But there are others where it's less common, and it's more of a leap. So how do you prove the cooperative model to those who don't have it around them in a way?
Yeah, we talked about other cooperatives. Of course, when Black Star was starting, there was really only Wheatsville, our food co-op, and our housing co-ops. So there weren't good examples of other cooperative businesses. The Austin cooperative economy has just really grown over the last couple years. So yes, we made reference to other cooperatives. Of course, we were the first cooperative like ours, but there are definitely multi-stakeholder food co-ops like Rainbow and People's Co-op, Weaver's Way in Asheville, North Carolina, that have these two stakeholders with the consumer members and the worker members. So we were able to say, hey, here's some models that are working like this in other parts of the country, and saying, here's why we think it's going to work here in Austin, and then really outline why it would be successful.
Great. One technical question: what types of software do Black Star use?
We used a program from 37 Signals. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, called HighRise. And that is kind of like project management software. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's good. I think there's a lot of open source things that you can use. But I would say any type of investment tracking or donation tracking like Razor's Edge is often used in nonprofits. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that's available.
Great. Okay. I know 37 Signals. This is sort of a philosophical question. John writes, is there any sense of why co-ops are not more prevalent? Meaning, what are the barriers that co-ops face that prevent them from expanding or growing?
I would say finance is number one, but that's for me being embedded in this cooperative community, right? Banks don't know a whole lot about co-ops, so it's hard to loan to them. It's hard to make a loan to a co-op because it's a lot easier for a bank to have one person on paper that's going to, take the fall when things don't work out. So, so that can be kind of difficult. Also, of course, as one of the keys of cooperatives is cooperation among cooperatives, which means you want to, of course, take a loan from a credit union, but credit unions have heavy restrictions on small business loans from the federal government. So I think funding can be really difficult. I think if it's a deep philosophical question, I would also say that I think we as a culture in America have a really hard time understanding how to work together in these kinds of ways. We're very used to someone owning the business and telling us what to do. I can say that personally because Black Star is run democratically. It takes someone about a year working at Black Star to actually get it, because we spend the first year breaking what we call breaking the worker mentality, which is just you're not used to thinking about work that way. We're not used to collaborating with one another. We're not used to using these collective decision-making processes. We're very much used to having one leader that tells us what to do, and that's the way it is. So I feel like it's a lot of just adjustment. I feel like, man, I don't know how left-wing to get with this, but of course there's a lot of misconceptions about cooperatives. As yeah, I get people all the time. They're like, "Hey, can I come volunteer at Black Star?" And I say, "Absolutely not. This is a business, and we really care about providing excellent customer service and having really trained people. We don't want you to come practice brewing beer here because this is our product that we sell, and it has to go through quality control." So I think there's some misconceptions too, because there's a lot of people that work collectively and call themselves co-ops, like artist co-ops, or maybe a daycare co-op that isn't actually a cooperative business. But they just use the word, so I think that that can sometimes lead to confusion as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, like Dana said, so much of it is just a mentality issue. When in the past year that we've been developing Moon Tower, we've been to a lot of conferences, presented at a lot of places, taken a lot of trips, and just talked to a lot of people who said, "That's a great idea. I'm going to start one too." And after we talked to them, we found out that they mean a sole proprietorship or something like that, which is fantastic. Help advance the cause of local food. But if you want to start, you have to want to start specifically a co-op. You have to want to give people the power of cooperation. You have to want to say, "I want to give all the farmers in this region," in the case of Moon Tower, 150-mile radius, "I want to give all of them a say in how this business is run, and we want to return all the profits to them." None of us are doing this to get rich by any means. If we're lucky, we'll get jobs out of this, and my title of general manager of the co-op will actually become a paying gig. But you have to want to do that. It is a mindset thing, and you have to get out of the mindset of sole proprietorship, LLC, a corporate entity. And you have to say, "I want to be democratic about this, and I want to help people do this." And it's once you get that mindset, you realize it might actually be easier, because if you come from an area of the country that doesn't have a lot of co-ops, or doesn't have any food hubs, or doesn't have a co-op grocery store, the way to do it is getting a whole bunch of people together, so you're not constantly struggling trying to start something. And your members are also your built-in customer base, at least in a consumer co-op like Black Star or a co-op grocery store. The soft opening for Black Star somehow got out into the community, and we literally had a line 2 blocks long of the over 2,000 members that we had at the time wanting to come in and sample the wares, because that's your built-in customer base right there. So once you get in the mindset of that, it could actually make a very difficult or seemingly impossible project completely possible, because you're working with a lot of other really great people who are just as dedicated as you are.
Well, I'm inspired. There are many more questions which I regret we just don't have time to get to. But maybe I can bundle them up and share them with you, and we can post some answers once you've gotten some rest, along with the recording of this webinar. There are still some excellent questions. I don't know if you want to take another couple. We're getting
Yeah.
long. All right, here's one specific question. Are there income tax advantages or incentives to investors?
Not to investors, but to co-ops there are, which is not the question. But
Right.
But for starting a co-op, there is a great income tax because you can distribute up to between 20 and 80% of your profits back to the members, which means you don't have to pay income taxes on 20 to 80% of the income that your co-op made, which is great. That's a great incentive to start a business. But there are not incentives. We have to send our investors a 1099 at the end of the year so that they can claim their dividend.
Okay. Have you run into any other particularly notable co-op models across the country? I mean, other than yours?
Man, that's really hard for me to answer because I'm so entrenched in the co-op community. So of course I'm thinking of millions of people. But you know what? Something that's really exciting to me right now is I just got back from Chicago a couple weeks ago at the National Worker Co-op Convention, and they have started a technical high school in the south side of Chicago that has horrible rates of incarceration and violence. And so these kids are then leaving the school with automatic worker-owner stakes in a production factory manufacturing trumpet and trombone mouthpieces. So to me, that's super exciting. These kids are going to college, going to school, learning a trade, and then getting out of school automatically owning their own business with an equity stake in a business. So to me, that just is the first. That comes off the first to my mind because I just learned about it. It's so exciting.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So the co-ops are just really, really, really thriving. And once, that thing that happens once you learn about something, you see it everywhere. There's been some op-eds in the New York Times over the last year about how co-ops are transforming the economy. So I think if anyone is interested, just really look around. They're everywhere, and they're doing some really amazing things.
Which I think maybe goes back to that more philosophical question, which started with the assertion that co-ops aren't that prevalent, and maybe in fact they are more prevalent than we realize.
Yeah, you know what else is Tropicana? Every time you buy orange juice from Tropicana or Ocean Spray, that's a co-op. Lando Lakes is a co-op. There's tons of co-ops, but they don't market themselves that way because of the negative association with like socialism or things like that, and coming off of the 1970s hippie food co-op thing. So there's tons of co-ops, and you're probably shopping at one right now and just don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Organic Valley is probably the largest food hub co-op.
Organic Valley is, yeah, and they do amazing things. And, you just have to go to Google and just type in, co-op, CO-OP, and you come up with all kinds of interesting things. Just today, I got an email from Acadia Cinema Co-op. It is an old movie theater co-op that is thriving, doing quite well. So they're all over. There's all different types, and there's a lot of things that you don't know are co-ops. There is a green cleaning service, house cleaning, business cleaning service here in Austin. That is a co-op. There are laundry co-ops. Like I said, True Value hardware stores. I believe ShopRite grocery stores are co-ops. There's all different types, including co-op owned buildings in New York City and other places. They're all around, and while not every business or every structure is right to be a co-op, some things just aren't going to work. They are all around, and they're really going through a renaissance right now as people start to realize this could be owned by the community, and that encourages people to come there, because old movie theaters are dying all over because no one goes. We have big, multiplexes. But if it's a co-op, and you get the power of cooperation there and start having new events and new types of things there and bringing in new blood, you could start a thriving business, whereas otherwise it would just be vacant.
Well, thank you, Jake, Dana, really thank you very much. One of the cornerstones of the good food movement is keeping our dollars local, such that we can realize the multiplier effect for our community. And the co-op model, tried and true, talked about a couple generations of co-ops, is definitely undergoing a renaissance, and the work Dana and Jake are doing and others in Austin is really a great example of this. So thank you. I do have a few little announcements and upcoming opportunities. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived on our website, along with the over 50 other webinars we've done in the past. Feel free to send others who you think you would have liked to have heard this presentation. The slides will be up there as well. Take some professional development time yourself and dig through our excellent archives. You can go to ngfn.org/webinars. This webinar should be up within a few business days. In fact, it may be up by tomorrow. Our webinars are organized into topics if you look in the left-hand navigation area, so dig into whatever interests you. We offer National Good Food Network webinars on the third Thursday of each month at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, noon 30 Pacific. Sign-up links are always at ngfn.org/webinars, and you can get in our mailing list so you can make sure you get reserve your spot. The next couple of webinars were created with food hubs in mind, but are quite applicable to other good food businesses. Call it a summer of decision-making tools. In July, we'll be tackling the very difficult subject of how to select the correct software to assist you in tracking and running your business. The first step in selecting software is deeply understanding your business, and from there you can create a clear set of requirements from your software, and selecting the right package follows. So take this first step with us in July. And in August, we're bringing you a brand new tool developed by Farm Credit of the Virginias and Farm Credit Council. As food hubs and other good food businesses require more equipment to run their operations, more decisions have to be made about leasing or buying or perhaps outsourcing. Designed for helping food hubs find the correct trucking or transport solution, this tool can also be adapted for other capital-intensive equipment decisions. According to the 2013 National Food Hub Survey, the MSU Center for Regional Food Systems conducted in collaboration with us, the Wallace Center, on average, food hub managers have between 1 and 5 years of experience across the essential skills of food hub management, so not that much. Several of the key challenges noted by a significant number of hubs focused on management and staffing issues. As a response, a team of experienced food hub professionals worked with the University of Vermont to create the first higher ed certificate program in the U.S. focused on food hub management. 25 students will have the opportunity to begin the 10-month program in January. Through a blend of hands-on, community-based, online, and on-campus learning, this one-of-a-kind professional certificate program prepares leaders for effective management of food hubs and sustainable food value chains. There are only 25 spaces, so if you are interested, inquire now. Go to the URL up there, learn.uvm.edu/foodhub. You can find the NGFN on YouTube, Twitter, on our website, ngfn.org. The Wallace Center is also on Facebook. Come like us. You can search for Wallace Center at Winrock International. And again, if you haven't already, sign up for our email updates. There's a link on the ngfn.org homepage, or just let us know in this post-webinar survey and we'll sign you right up. Contact us at any time. contact@ngfn.org. The NGFN would like to thank you for your time again today. Let me encourage you to fill out that survey. It should open in your web browser in just a moment, and this concludes the webinar.